In July 2014, Japan's government approved a reinterpretation of this article, added to the Constitution of Japan during the occupation following World War II, in order to allow Japan to exercise the right of self-defense and actively participate in military action if one of its allies is attacked. A further 2020 deadline has been set by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to further revising it. The recent escalation of the Korean crisis and the resurgent Chinese power in the region have set in motion forces that were sealed soon after the end of the Second World War, but were not completely dormant. From North Korea ballistic missile launches to Chinese movements of men, vehicles and ships in the disputed island in the South China Sea, there is enough to be legitimately concerned in Japan. When the Korean conflict broke out in the 50s, the US forces that were in Japan were pulled out and sent in Korea, thus leaving Japan without protection. For this reason, it was allowed for Japan to establish a police national force for the very basic need to defend the country from invasions, and therefore this article was proposed. This means that Japanese couldn't have a legitimate armed force, but only a police one. At this point, some of you should be wondering, why with these premises Japan is on this list? It's quite weird for a self-defense armed force to be one of the most powerful, is not? Things aren't quite adding up. Why? As in every country, Japanese public opinion too ranges between those who think pacifism is the way to go, and this has always proved to be a very popular opinion, and those who think it's their right to defend the interests of the country by means of their national armed forces. Then there is the Nippon Kaigi, Japanese for Japan Conference, a Japanese nationalist association with over 35,000 members, included many part of the establishment, and Shinzo Abe itself, the current Prime Minister of Japan. Constitutional and historic revisionists that seek to remilitarize again Japan among other things. Then, finally, there is a further side of the story, more than anything concerning the subtleties of modern languages, like calling escort ship destroyer, helicopter destroyer, what actually is an aircraft carrier, probably in order to match it with the name Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. Japan Armed Forces numbers are very similar to those of other Western powers, with an active military force of 247,000. Japan has the privilege to have its own space agency, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Actually has 7 military satellites in orbit, 6 intelligence surveillance reconnaissance and 1 communication satellite, and it's possible it will launch a dedicated early warning satellite in the near future. Type 10 Itomaru tank. It's the new Japanese tank. Its mobility is one of the best in the market, with a backward speed of 70 km per hour. The use of modular armor components make this tank easily adaptable depending on each mission requirements. The rest of the equipment is quite small in numbers, with infantry fighting vehicles and armored personal carriers not even reaching 1,000 units together, while artillery is enough for Japan operational requirements. Japan is one of the best equipped militaries concerning ballistic missile defense, with a combination of terrestrial MIM-104F Patriot PEC-3 and Aegis mounted on its Atago cruisers and Kongo destroyers. On the contrary, it doesn't possess ballistic and cruise missiles because of Article 9 ban concerning the possess of offensive capabilities, but it's currently researching and developing an indigenous cruise missile. The Japanese self-defense armed forces are hugely imbalanced in favor of the Navy. It may seem obvious, but it must be underlined as a fundamental point so as to understand Japanese strategic and diplomatic view. Japan is an island that needs to import most of the goods necessaries for its survival. As such, the protection of the sea lanes is not a strategic requirement, but a matter of life and death. Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force is among the very best equipped navies in the world. You might wonder, how much? Well, someone even considered this navy to be in the top 3, second or third, but we already explained why it is difficult adopting such a ranking system. China itself is quite concerned about the capabilities of the Japanese naval forces, and not only them. Now, finally, it will become clear how hilarious the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Forces name sounds. Japan is second only to US Navy for its number of operational aircraft carriers. Although defined also as helicopter carriers, both the two Izumo and two Hyuga classes can carry rotary and fixed-wing aircrafts. They don't have either a sky jump or a catapult, so they are limited in using STOL aircrafts and with limited payload. Japan already ordered F-35A Lightning II, so in the future they might order the stalled version of the fighter, F-35B. In a configuration that includes air superiority fighters, anti-surface and anti-submarine helicopters, and accompanied by an escort fleet, they may act as a command ship of a formidable task force, and they may field 4 of them. Not a single country in the world can do that besides the US Navy. Add to this the amphibious capabilities of the 3 Ozumi-class LSTs locking in the 4 aircraft carriers. The Atago Cruisers class is for sure one of the most powerful in the world, very efficient against surface and anti-submarine threats. They have an anti-ballistic missile suite that includes SM-3 Block 1A standard missiles coupled with Aegis BMG-3 advanced anti-ballistic system. Kongo destroyers are sometimes referred to as a would-be cruiser class, which means that basically they have fewer weapon systems and slightly inferior electronic components than the Atago class, and that's it. Excluding the Kongo class from the list of Japanese destroyers, the remaining destroyers, accompanied by some submarines, can beat alone the fleets of many navies worldwide. It is not difficult to imagine why, considering they are 20, and without even considering Kongo destroyers, anti-surface, anti-submarine and anti-aerial ships. Each class has in fact a specialization. For instance, the new Akizuki class is lethal against aerial threats, as it possesses an advanced anti-aerial warfare suite. Other very valuable assets in the hands of the Japanese Navy are its submarines. The Soryu class is Japan's first air-independent propulsion submarine class and is simply believed to be one of the most advanced submarine classes in the world. Japanese submarines are designed to excel in the role of hunter-killers, foreseeing as a possible scenario a clash with China and its vast navy. The peculiarity of the Japanese Air Force is the great emphasis put on the anti-surface and anti-submarine capabilities. Most notably is its license-built F-16 version, F-2. This aircraft, although designed as an air superiority fighter, is capable to adopt a second configuration armed with 4 Type 88 anti-ship missiles. Of great importance is the consistent fleet of P-3C Orion and the new Japanese P-1. As stated before, it looks as if everything is centered on impeding enemy vessels to approach Japan. There are some shortcomings here and there, like the need to increase the number of refueling aircraft, but generally Japanese air forces can qualify as modern, powerful and very capable, although they are very far from the quality of the naval forces. Current circumstances are the perfect excuse on the part of the Japanese establishment to lead Japan on the road to rearmament. We should ask ourselves what Japan will do with its armed forces if the full revision of Article 9 of the Constitution is approved. For now, the only certainty we have is that the Japanese naval forces are a thorn in the side of the Chinese naval deployment and are a proud obstacle to any further expansion, and that it will take some time for the Chinese naval forces to get that decisive strategic advantage to outperform its Japanese counterparts, if ever.